Welcome to John's Tarot. This isn't fortune telling, it isn't prediction, and it isn't about escaping the ordinary. This is a space where we slow down long enough to notice structure in our lives, in our history, and in ourselves. The symbols don't tell us what to do, they give us a place to land for meeting. And here we explore the maps. Tarot, the I Ching, the runes, not as authorities, but as mirrors. What emerges is already there. We're just learning to see it more clearly. If you're walking your own path of integration, if you're caring less than you used to, or if you're simply curious about how structure becomes alive, you're in the right place. Let's begin. Welcome to John's Tarot. Thank you very much. I hope you all had a great week and that things are going well for you. Today I'm going to talk a little bit about something that's been a part of my life for, I'm coming up on 38 years. I'm coming up on 37 years of sobriety. I'm going to talk a little bit about the I Ching.
Oh, far out, man.
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's been an integral part of my life for that period of time. It came to me. It's odd, it's really odd to me. It came to me during a period of dramatic transition in my life. I wanted to get sober. I didn't know how to get sober. And I was struggling with it, and I had encountered Buddhism. And I was practicing Buddhism at the time, and a friend gave me a copy of it. And this is the initial copy that I was given. There we go. It was the Illustrated I Ching by R.L. Wing. And that's the copy I'll probably be using today as I continue with this little production. And I have a prepared presentation to go along with this. And I found, after I figured out what it was, I was definitely confused during that period of my life, and I figured out what it was, and it's an oracle. And I'm going to talk a little bit about where this oracle came from and how it has developed through time and how it comes to us today. And it usually comes to people during times of transition. I was not searching for it. I didn't even know such a thing existed. And I was given this copy by somebody called, and I don't even know what happened to this individual. Her name was Tina. She was a girlfriend of a friend of mine. And John Best, what did she say? Bestest prayers are there. I will always do my best to be there for communication. Take care. I do love you dearly, Tina W. I hope Tina did well in her life. I didn't even know such a thing existed. And what it is, like I said, it's an oracle. And I figured out how to use it during that period of time. And it provides you with answers to life, answers to transitions. And I have a more balanced definition of it in my presentation. But it was a guide. It's a guide in life. And it has been a guide in my life for all these years. Now, we are in a period of dramatic transition right now, a dramatic turmoil right now. And I've always found that I Ching has been valuable in in periods of turmoil and helped to identify where you're at in the system, what is going on in the cycle of life, and what is my position in it, and how do I proceed, given that things are in a period of dramatic transition. And that's what I use it for. So let me go ahead and, the other interesting thing was, I'm going to repeat this again, I guess. I had no idea that there was such a thing, that such a thing existed. And I did not look for it. It found me. And I chose to use it as a guide. And now I'm coming up 37 years. Let's see. I probably had it for about 38 years. And I'm coming up to a period in my life. I've been sober for all this time. It's helped guide me through that dark period of addiction and alcoholism, and guide me into a Oh, it's been an interesting journey. I worked in mental health for a while as a counselor in a psychiatric hospital. Then I went on to get my RN license, and I'm getting ready to finish up a career as an ICU nurse. And the I Ching has been, I won't say it's an indispensable guide in life, indispensable source of guidance. And it's taught me a lot of things. So I'm gonna do this little presentation on the I Ching. I hope you enjoy it. And at the end, we're gonna do a couple little I Ching readings. We'll ask the I Ching some questions, and I'll show you how to use it, and we'll see what kind of answers it comes up with. And I'm thinking about using it we're in a period of dramatic political turmoil. And I might just ask questions like, what is my best position in this period of dramatic political turmoil? What is the safest path for me to follow, or the safest path for all of us to follow? And I think that's what I'm going to do it on. I'm looking for my presentation. There it is. So let's go ahead and move over to the presentation, and we'll see how this all comes out. Translating change, the I Ching as a way of seeing. There are times in life when things are changing, but we don't yet understand how. You can feel it. Something is shifting, but it hasn't fully revealed itself. And in those moments, we tend to look for something to orient us. Not certainty, but a way of seeing. Today I want to talk about one of those ways. I didn't come to the I Ching as a study. It showed up during a period of transition, a time when things were moving, but not clearly. And I've noticed something since then. Systems like the I Ching don't usually appear when everything is stable. They tend to show up when direction isn't clear, when change is underway, when you're between one state and another. Not to give answers, but to help you see movement. And this isn't just personal. Across time, people have turned to systems like this during periods of change, not because they were certain, but because they needed orientation. That's the pattern. When things become unclear, we look for a way to see more clearly. What the I Ching is. At its core, the I Ching is very simple. It describes states and how those states change. A hexagram represents a situation, a pattern, a moment in time. And the changing lines show how the situation is moving. It's not telling you what will happen, it's showing you what is already in motion. A glimpse, the hidden layer. There's something else that tends to appear around systems like this, and it's a little harder to describe. Across time, different people, artists, musicians, those working with symbolic systems have described moments when something seems to come through them rather than from them. Pamela Coleman Smith, who illustrated the tarot deck many people use today, seemed to work in that kind of space. Musicians talk about it too, where a piece of music feels like it arrives all at once, already formed. I've had brief moments of that myself. Not something I can explain, but something I can recognize. I think of that as contact with a deeper realm, something usually hidden. Not supernatural, just not always visible. And systems like the I Ching seem to sit close to that space. What I call that is the archetypal field. I experienced a little bit of the archetypal field when I did the Soul Awakening Spirit series. I really didn't develop it. It just kind of came through me. And it was like having a spiritual experience that went on for about 2 months. And it really burned me out. I don't really necessarily want to do it again. I believe the I Ching was developed by people who touched the archetypal field in a period of extreme stress and circumstances that were overwhelming. And somebody was able to enter this archetypal field. Pamela Coleman Smith, in her design of the tarot cards also, I believe, touched on this archetypal field, and she stepped into it and developed the tarot cards. At least that's my belief. History, time, and continuity. The I Ching is ancient. Its origins go back 3,000 years to early China during the Zhou dynasty, around 1,000 years before the Common Era. It emerged during periods of instability and transition when people were trying to understand change, not control it. Over time, the system was refined. Additional layers of interpretation were added, often associations with later scholars such as Confucius. So what we have today is not the work of one person, but something shaped across generations. And that matters because it means the system has been tested, used, and carried forward through repeated cycles of change. Empires arose, collapsed, societies transformed, and yet the I Ching remained, not as something fixed, but as something continually to return to. I believe the I Ching is an autopoetic system. And what I mean by autopoiesis, and I've talked about this before in past podcasts, is it is an example of, it shows signs of life, signs of development, signs of change. Because every time you return to the I Ching, it feels just like it's alive. Every time you return to the I Ching, it gives you something different. It changes with you. As you change, the I Ching seems to change. And that gives it that autopoetic appearance. Development through time. Different contributors added structure and commentary, but the core remained the same. Observe the situation and observe how it changed. That's why it continues to exist. Not because it predicts, although I think it does. If you ask the right questions, you could get an idea of which way the system is changing and how to position yourself within that system, but because it reflects what it actually does. So this isn't just an old text. It's a way of seeing movement. When things are changing, it doesn't remove uncertainty. It helps you stand within it more clearly. A simple reflection. So if you approach this simply, you might ask, where am I right now? What is changing? How should I relate to that change? Not to get an answer, but to see what's already there. In closing, there are times when clarity doesn't come from more information. It comes from seeing pattern. And once you begin to recognize how things move, how systems shift, how change unfolds, you don't need certainty. You need awareness. And that's what systems like the I Ching offer. Not answers, but orientation. Take what resonates and leave what doesn't, and observe what becomes visible. And that is my little presentation on the I Ching. I'm going through a period of change too. I'm a little uncertain what I'm going to do with John's Tarot after this episode. How I'm going to pursue this. Whether I'm going to go back and do some more fortune telling type stuff, or because I have that ability. Regardless what anybody else thinks, I have a little bit of psychic ability, and I channel it through these systems. That's what I've always done. I didn't realize it was a psychic ability until a little later in life. But I have that ability, and what I'm going to do with it, I really need to stay away from politics as much as possible, because that is a very dangerous place to exist in this current political environment right now. What I need to do is survive. And what I also need to do is pick up some listeners and pick up some views. So I'm looking for a way to do that. So as I move forward, that's what I'm focused on right now. How am I going to do that? So in order to use the I Ching, and I have several versions. I told you I have this version here. I have the illustrated I Ching by R.L. Wing, which was my very first edition of it. I also have the Wilhelm version. Let's see if that comes up. And this came to me, and I went to an old bookstore, and somehow I found this, and it caught my attention. And I also have a version which I like a lot, and that is the I Ching Book of Changes, a guide to life's turning points by Brian Brown Walker. And this is a very modern version. It's a very modern edition, and it's worth getting. It's worth taking a look at. What I'm going to use today, though, is my illustrated I Ching by R.L. Wing, since that was one of my first ones. And it's not hard to use, really. And that's why I was able to figure out what you do is you throw 3 coins and you throw them 6 times, and they produce a hexagram. I need to write that down as I'm doing it. And I have a little illustration here of what that looks like. So what do you get? You get heads and tails, right? If you get 2 heads and a tail, that gives you a straight line. 2 tails and a head, that gives you a broken line. 3 tails gives you a changing line, a straight line with a dot. We'll call that a changing line. And 3 heads gives you a broken line with a dot. That's a changing line. So that when you ask a question, the changing lines lead to another hexagram. And I'm not going to go into how you find that. If you pick up the I Ching, it's easy to identify. It's easy to find out. And how I learned to use it was to ask specific questions. Ask like, you want to avoid yes or no questions. You want to ask effect of a particular action, path towards a certain goal, or status of a certain relationship, those type of questions. So how I learned to use it, let me grab a pen, is that you ask the question, you write it down on a piece of paper, and put the piece of paper in your lap, and then throw the coins 6 times, and write down what it was. So my first question, at least for today, is what is the path that we need to follow in order to survive during this dynamic, changing political environment? So path during change in this political environment. And I'll throw the coins 6 times, and we'll see what kind of reading I get. Environment. Path to change during this political environment. And I'll write them down, and we'll see what we get. And I'm not going to do a tarot reading today. We're just going to do an I Ching reading, because I'm trying to introduce as many people as possible to the I Ching, because we're all in a period of dramatic change right now, and we want a good guide. And the I Ching I have found to be a very good guide as I move forward in life in periods of dramatic change. So, what is the path forward during this period of dramatic change, political change? So what I have is 2 heads and a tail, and that's the bottom line. 2 heads and a tail, that's a solid line. What path do we follow in this period of dramatic political change? And this one here, I have 3 tails. 3 tails gives me a changing line. And I'll show you how this works. What path do we follow during this period of political change? In this political environment, path during the change in this political environment. I Ching understood. That's why I wrote it and put it down. And I have 3 tails again. That'll be, go to that. Another line with a dot. What is the path during change in this political environment? And I have heads, tails, and that's going to be a straight line. What is the path to change? Path during change in this political environment. And I have 2 tails and a head, which is Lines like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more throw. What is the path? What path should we follow during the change in this political environment? And I have, this time I have 2 heads and a tail, and that's a straight line. And then it changes, and then we get a secondary one. So I'll have line, space, line, over space, space, line. And I'll show you how you get that is you look it up on a graph where I have that graph. It's here. Here's a picture of it. It's not that hard. So you go what the top line is, the top 3 lines over the bottom lines. So let me look that up real quick. So I've looked up the hexagrams. I made a change. And this is what we get. Let me read it to you. The picture is of Shen Xiao, who painted this portrait of himself at 80 years of age. He was one of China's favorite painters, and purchasers for his work line up at his gate. Although he was not eager to make himself known, the beauty and vigor of his work spread his fame far and wide. He was a benevolent old gentleman who enjoyed helping needy friends and had hundreds of humble admirers. Late in life, he found the Wu school of painting and is considered the first of the 4 great Ming masters. Shen Xiao was a descendant of a long line of scholars and painters. As a result, he had a strong dislike of despotic and irresponsible rulers. In power during his lifetime, he declined a position in the imperial court, preferring to shun the splendor that covered up the decay and corruption of the times. It was his independence and honorable stance that granted him sovereignty among the people. Sovereignty brings exceptional progress. Intelligence is within, the strong forming the condition for sovereignty. An enlightened person, therefore, represses evil influences by making obvious that which is good. He aligns himself with the unfolding destiny of the cosmos. Now, this is a reading for all of us. Because of a stroke of good fortune, you meet with supreme success. Your position has become one of authority within the situation of your inquiry. Yet you continue in an attitude of unassuming modesty. With such an attitude, you pose no threat to those around you, and they, therefore, loyally align themselves to your authority. Thus, you are granted sovereignty. You are in the spotlight. I wish I was in the spotlight, but it's a very interesting reading. Stroke of good fortune, I meet with success. My position has become one of authority within the situation. As you continue in an attitude of unassuming modesty, so it's describing me. You are in the spotlight, exposed to the view of those you lead and those above you. Therefore, proper behavior is necessary in order to continue in your accomplishments. Keep your ego in check. That's always a challenge for me. Examine yourself for signs of pride, which are inappropriate to someone in a position of sovereignty. You must now fight to suppress evil in yourself and in the general situation by making evident those things which are good. Your dealings in worldly affairs will meet with success. I hope the podcast meets with success. This might mean material wealth. Even your superiors widely acquiesce to your sovereignty as you continue in your progress. In social matters, even the strongest members of your community will defer to you. With gentleness and goodness, you will win their hearts. Through compassion, that is, identifying with others and finding the possibilities of their weakness within yourself, you move them to loyalty and gain their obedience. If you are an artist, your creative inspirations are now relevant to your culture, and you will meet with great success. Furthermore, your personal relationships, although lacking in passion, are well ordered. Here too, you notice the position of sovereignty. If you are kind and unselfish, your relationships will flower. Within itself, sovereignty may be a burden as well as a blessing. When experiencing material success, you are most easily fall victim to such vices as pride, greed, and immodesty. You must now make a special effort to curb any attitudes that will weaken your character. Instead, focus your attention upon those qualities in yourself and enhance your goodness. Now for the changing lines. It's a simple matter. I go to the back of the book and I look at the changing lines. And my two changing lines were, the first one was, the second line, you will not only have tremendous resources to work with, but you also possess the wherewithal to coordinate these assets and make them work for you. Such ingenuity will allow you to fearlessly attempt ambitious endeavors. And then line 3, the enlightened person will place his talents at the resources at the disposal of his leader or his community. A lesser person cannot do that. So what it's telling me is I have great resources if I'm to place them at the disposal of my community, which I am attempting to do today. And then the second one is 21. It tells me where I'm at. It tells me where I'm at in the system. I'm in a position of sovereignty. I'm in a position of at least mild leadership. And I'm placing my skills at the disposal of my community. And then the second one, what it changes to is reform. And I'm just going to go ahead and read it all. In his commemorative engravings, we see a fleet of well-armed ships with troops disembarking and subduing those who oppose them. It depicts the campaign carried on by Emperor Qin against Vietnam. He brought his cavalry by boat to achieve another successful annexation for his campaign. The engraver of this picture is unknown, although he was used to a new technique to depict the scene. It was done during a time of Emperor Qin Lung, who reigned between 1736 and 1796, and bears a poem written by him describing the victory. Under Qin Lung's China was again a strong, powerful. The empire's borders were expanded at great cost to the country's coffers, and one of the most extensive art collections in existence was compiled. All of this put an incredible strain on China's economy. Reform will bring progress. See if I can read it. It is advantageous to let justice be administered. Aroused consciousness forms a condition for reform. The ancient rulers, therefore, put forth their laws and clearly defined the penalties. A time for energetic reform. Either an inferior person who is working against you or a situation has developed at cross purpose to your life is interfering with the attainment of your aims. This obstacle must be sought out, reformed, and thereby eliminated. Success will come through enforcement of laws and administration of justice. There is neither possibility of compromise nor hope that the problem will miraculously vanish. It cannot be rationalized or ignored, and you cannot maneuver around it. It is tangible, real, and self-generating interference in your life, and must be severely reformed before it causes any permanent damage to you. In dealing with social and political affairs, a strict adherence to established justice is necessary. A society without principles or clarity about its laws is a group of people who are going nowhere. It's describing where we're at politically. Do we have strict adherence to established justice? Are we becoming a society without principles or clarity about its laws? Because that's a group of people who are going nowhere. And swift penalties to restore order. If you are a member of a group, now is the time to support superior persons who can bring about political reform. Pretty dead on to what I asked. I don't know how this comes out and how this works like this. So it is suggesting that we support people who can bring about political reform. That doesn't necessarily mean me, but it means that I support people who can do that. Personal relationships without defined guidelines, reasonable expectations, reciprocal considerations, and clear plans for the future are now in danger of dissolving. and the chaos being generated by the chaos being generated by the current situation. Somebody is definitely generating chaos in the current situation. Misunderstandings and confusions will become more common unless firm, clear-headed action is taken to dispense with whatever you perceive to be an obstacle to union. There cannot be a more appropriate time to examine your character and determine the extent to which delusions, rationalizations, or habits have usurped control of your judgment. And that is referring to MAGA in my view. Know what you want, what makes you feel good about yourself. Know what brings you into harmony with others. These are your guidelines and principles. Other factors that assume control of your behavior, your health, or that create inner discord are the obstacles that must be overcome. So the I Ching is giving me clear guidance. I need to know what makes me feel good about myself and engage in that. And I know what makes me feel good about myself. That is helping others and being of service to others. And it's also warning about giving your, in this current political climate, it is clear that people have given their thought life over to, they call it outsourcing your thinking. And it's I Ching is addressing that. Am I giving my thought life over, outsourcing my thinking to any political parties? And I mean any political parties, not necessarily Republican, but Democratic as well. And it's advising me, don't do that. Don't give your thought life, don't outsource your thinking. No, I think that is a pretty interesting reading by the I Ching and a demonstration of how to use the I Ching in guiding you through these difficult political times. So I think we're going to wrap this up for this week.
Goodbye, Professor Marvel, and thanks a lot!
Well, it was my pleasure. Let me know what you think I should be doing with this podcast. What direction should I start to take it? I think I've gone as far as I can with talking about systems and systems management and how to find yourself in systems. And should I go into doing live readings and open that up? I've done that before. I think it was on Twitch is the name of that program, where I just open it up. I go on Twitch and I offer myself to do live readings. Or I can do it on YouTube, or there's other ways I can do that. Or should I just do more fortune telling on how to guide ourselves through these difficult and tumultuous, I hope I pronounced that correctly, times of political disruption. What is the path forward for us? So until next week, be careful, be cool, be kind, and remember, have courage, find faith, and I will talk to you all next week. Send me an email and let me know what you think would be a useful way forward for me to do this podcast. Okay, thanks a lot, and have a good week. All right, bye-bye.